What's up, guys? This is going to be part one of my DRZ400 budget handbrake how-to video series. And basically the reason I'm doing this project is I wanted to add a handbrake setup to this bike so I can progress my wheelies beyond just sit downs and staggards, but I didn't want to spend the $600 on the kits that are available out there. So what I found is this caliper right here, which is the right front caliper off of a Suzuki SV650. And I bought this used on eBay. It came off a crashed bike and it cost me less than 20 bucks. And what I'm planning on doing is making a bracket out of aluminum to mount this caliper up using this hole right here, and then taking the factory rotor guard here off and using the two mounting holes for it down there. And what I did here is I've clamped the caliper on in the exact position that I want it, making sure to line up the pads perfectly with the rotor, just using one of these little screw clamps. And I'm going to make a template out of cardboard that's going to be what I'm going to transfer over to the sheet of aluminum to make my bracket. So I went ahead and made up a little template out of just some cardboard from a shoebox. And it's going to go like that. All right, so now I've got the cardboard template all mounted up, and it looks like everything's going to work out okay. The only thing that I am seeing is that I'm probably going to have to make some spacers to go between the bracket and the caliper, and between the bracket and this mount here, because it doesn't look like all of this is going to be perfectly in line with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back off of here and transfer it over to the sheet of aluminum I'm going to use and get the actual bracket cut out. All right, so I got my template transferred over to the sheet of aluminum I'm going to use for the bracket. I wanted to use a 1/4 inch sheet, but we didn't have any, but I did have this scrap piece of 3/16 laying around, and it's still pretty stout stuff, so I think it'll be okay. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to use to cut this out. I'm going to attempt, I guess, with a scroll saw first and see how that goes, and if it's not working out, I may move to the bandsaw, which I was really kind of hoping to avoid because I didn't want to tear up my blades. So the scroll saw worked out better than expected. It was a little bit slow, but it only took about 5 minutes to get the part cut out. The lines are not perfect. I'll have to go back and straighten all this up, which I'll do probably just with a file or a belt sander. But overall, it's pretty decent. I was adding oil to it, which is the red stuff that you see, just because the blade was getting hot, and I thought maybe it would help lubricate it and keep it cool. I guess it worked. I didn't break any blades, and the blade still feels pretty good. All right, so I got the bracket here. I've got all the oil off of it and extra shavings. It does need some cleaning up, which I'm going to clamp it up here in the vise using these rubber jaw faces. And I'll probably use a file on it to start with and see how that goes. And if I need to, I'll take some of this to the belt sander and get it better. And then once that's all cleaned up, we'll get the holes drilled out over on the drill press and get it mounted up on the bike and see what it looks like. I got it all cleaned up. I ended up using my little belt sander for most of it. The file was just taking too long and it wasn't really coming out that good, but the edges are all pretty decent. Good enough for me. I'm gonna paint it anyway, so you won't really see much of it. And I'm gonna go ahead and knock these edges down just by hand with some sandpaper because they're kind of sharp, and then I'm gonna get it drilled up. So I got the bracket all drilled out and mounted up for a test fit, and it looks like it's going to work okay. There are a couple little things that I need to tweak. It's really close to the caliper right here, so I think I'm going to cut a notch in it. And it's also actually hitting on the rubber boot over here for the slide pin. So I'm going to have to cut that corner out a little bit. But other than that, it looks like it's going to all be okay. It's stronger than I expected, even being the 3/16. It's a little bit of flex, but I think it'll be okay. The bracket is, however, slightly out of alignment with the rotor. I measured it and the top is about 1 millimeter farther away, so I'm going to have to space this out a little bit at the bottom. And also I'm going to have to make some spacers to go between the bracket and the caliper itself. So I went ahead and put all the finishing touches on the bracket. As you can see, I've totally recut this area different, cut a little off the top over here and radiused all of the corners. I also went ahead and cut a notch here, even though it wasn't hitting it, just to give it a little bit of extra clearance around the corner of this caliper. I also fixed the alignment issue by countersinking the back of the bracket on this hole. And basically all that's left at this point is to make some spacers or just find some washers to go between the bracket and the caliper on these two bolts. So now that I know that this bracket and caliper is actually going to work properly on here, I can go ahead and get a brake line and master cylinder order to complete the install. In the meantime, while I'm waiting on that to come in, I'll pull this back off and probably either paint it or at the least just clean it up. I also want to try to get these markings off of here that were on it when I got it, just to make it look a little bit nicer. Then once that brake line and master cylinder comes in, we'll be back for part 2 to actually complete the install.